Hello, sweetheart. Please like and subscribe to receive daily updates on more stunning news. Greetings from Lies and Secrets. The familiar smell of coffee did little to ease my discomfort as I stood there with the early light streaming in through the kitchen window. Rather like the vines that climbed over our garden fence, my thoughts were a tangled mess. I felt as though I was looking into a chasm that I had created for myself perched on the edge of a cliff. Our daily routine, which had once been reassuring, now felt confining. Additionally, I had concealed this secret, this intense want for something wild and untamed. Even from Daniel, I had done something unimaginable because of that desire, something that would destroy our marriage itself. I realized I had to confront the reality as I put down my mug, the coffee getting colder. Would Daniel ever get it? Would the hurricane I was about to unleash not destroy our love? Here I am, Lila standing in my kitchen, the countertops glowing warmly in the morning light. The air is filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, a daily routine. Something feels odd, though, when I pour the dark liquid into my favorite cup today. I can't completely put an end to the rumbling of dissatisfaction that is restless in my bones. I watch the neighborhood come to life as I look out the window. The sound of children laughing fills the streets as they make their way to school. Mr. Thompson, the mailman, waves as he goes past. His path is as clear-cut as the dawn. Our house is a picture of suburban paradise tucked away among the trees. However, within is this itch, this desire for something greater. I'll take you back. A little simple. Pleasures have always been woven throughout my life with Daniel. You see, his mind is as keen as the instruments he uses in his job as an engineer. At home, however, he is the man who spends his evenings bent over small tracks watching his model trains move with an accuracy that reflects his own life. Our golden retriever, Bill, comes next. 3 years ago, we adopted him from a shelter. His tail waggled so enthusiastically that it could have propelled a small town, and his eyes resembled pools of melting chocolate. He became our shadow, our guardian, and our unending supply of love. The instant we welcomed him home, we are lulled to sleep by his gentle snores as he snoozes at the foot of our bed. Our days consist of routine. The roses in the garden, whose petals bear witness to my attention to detail, blossom despite the passing of the seasons. I lose myself in the world of books at the library where I work part-time. Each one is a doorway to a different life or opportunity. However, our evenings are what really make us who we are. The sound of grilling glass, clinking, and laughter fills the neighborhood with his enthusiasm that makes everyone grin. Bill is the life of these parties. His bark and exuberant proclamation of his presence is as recognizable as our own voices. I can't get rid of this feeling, though. As I sit here drinking coffee, I'm unable to fully comprehend it. It's like a shadow in the periphery of my eyesight. Daniel is happy with his consistent demeanor and love of routine. But me, as I gaze to the horizon, I wonder what is out there beyond our small paradise. I recall our first encounter at a friend's gathering that evening. Daniel's eyes glowed with delight as he passionately discussed the complexities of train systems. In addition to his expertise, he made me feel seen and understood, which is why I was pulled to him. Each chapter of our love journey was full of warmth, humor, and the occasional adventure, much like a well-written novel. However, I've been hiding this aspect of myself even from Daniel lately. It's difficult for me to describe, and it's not what you'd anticipate from a woman whose life appears to be so well planned. It's a yearning, a want for an untamed wild thing. I've always been the good girl, the one who keeps the peace and abides by the rules. However, there is another aspect of me that yearns for the excitement of the unexpected and the unknown. It's a summons to something greater, something different, like a whisper in the wind. And I see that this secret, this hidden longing is more than simply a passing notion. As I stand here with the coffee getting cold in my hand, it's becoming stronger and demanding recognition as a part of who I am. It's the cause of my uneasiness and the feeling that something is lacking from this idyllic existence. Knowing that Daniel will be home shortly, I check the time. His smile will be as predictable as a sunset when he enters the room, and I will kiss him to start our pattern. However, there is a secret that might destroy everything we have created, and a storm is rising inside. Thus, I find myself at the edge of my own life, questioning whether I have the courage to venture beyond the security of our house and the solace of our love. As I put down my cup, I realize that I'll soon have to confront this truth that has the power to alter everything. For weeks now, I've been experiencing this restlessness, a slight change in the atmosphere that feels like the first hints of fall in the summer breeze. Little things like going on longer walks with Bill were the first steps. It was no longer sufficient for us to take the same path around the block I had to wander to discover. Bill and I went farther than ever one evening. When the sun went down and the streets were covered in lengthy shadows, we ended ourselves in areas of the neighborhood I had never seen before, with less homogeneous homes, Wilder gardens and a distinct population. Mer Jenkins, an elderly gentleman, was sitting on his porch, his eyes sparkling with tales of a life well lived. He informed me about his experiences traveling, seeing new places, and having adventures. His remarks conjured up enticing, vivid images in my head. Then came Mrs. Alvarez, who invited us in for tea and had hair as silver as the moon. Every antique in her house had a story to tell and came from all around the world. She talked about her early years dancing in Havana's streets and finding love. I became curious about life outside of the routine I had become so used to after reading her stories. I experienced a change as we made our way home, Bill's tail bouncing with excitement at our newfound knowledge. The world appeared more expansive and lively, and I questioned why I had limited myself to such a little portion of it. When I came back that evening, Daniel was in the living room absorbed in his model train set, a microcosm of regularity and order. The trains traveled in perfect circles. At first, he was so focused that he didn't even notice me. For a brief while, I observed this man I loved, and I came to the realization that our lives had turned into an endless loop of those music. I made the decision to change things up the following day. To rekindle the spark that seemed to have faded under the stress of everyday life, I organized a surprise weekend getaway that would allow us to escape our routine. Long country drives, royal inns, and evenings full of whispered vows and laughing were all in my mind. But Daniel's face sank when I told him about my plan. With a project deadline hanging over him like a thundercloud, he was overburdened with work. I felt disappointed, but I didn't let it get to me. I decided to do something instead. Bill would accompany me, but I would travel alone. Maybe I needed a self-discovery voyage and an opportunity to explore the part of myself that was drawn to the unknown. The sky was a tapestry of gentle pinks and oranges. The morning I departed, I only brought the necessities, and Bill was clearly excited about the adventure that lay ahead. I had a mixture of remorse and liberation as we drove away. Daniel had bid me farewell with an apologetic kiss and a promise that we would soon do something special, but this was my trip for the time being. The scenery unfolded like a storybook throughout the peaceful trip. Bill's head was out the window, his nose collecting every fragrance, his ears fluttering in the wind. We came to a small village that had the elegance of a bygone period. The rooms at the charming inn had a scent of aged wood and lavender. I felt the weight of my loneliness that first night as I sat by myself in the silent chamber. However, it was also freeing. The lyrics seemed to dance off the page, speaking directly to my soul as I read by candlelight, something I hadn't done in years. Bill and I went out the following day. We strolled across fields where the ground was dotted with vibrant wildflowers. I got to know Elise, a local artist who painted landscapes with such passion that it seemed like she was encapsulating the spirit of a place. She invited me to her studio, where I found myself talking about my life, my restlessness, and my secret aspirations while surrounded by canvases and brushes. Elise's eyes understood as she listened. She asserted that in order to perceive our lives properly, we occasionally need to take a step back. As I watched Bill chase butterflies, his enthusiasm contagious, her words replayed in my thoughts. As the weekend progressed, unforeseen circumstances started to influence my path. I discovered a long-forgotten trail that led to a remote lake. The water was motionless, mirroring the sky. Like leaves on water, my thoughts floated as I sat at the edge. I faced my secret and my need for something wild and untamed here in this solitude. I came to see that this was about more than just breaking free from habit. It was about rediscovering who I was outside of the roles I played. The calm yet profound lake reflected my own indebtedness and the aspects of myself that I had ignored. I decided while the sun was sinking and the sea was bathed in golden light, I refused to let my return home mark the end of this voyage. I would share this interest and this spirit of adventure with Daniel. Perhaps, just perhaps, we could discover a new route together that would combine the excitement of the unknown with the security of habit. Knowing that this weekend had altered me in ways I was only just starting to comprehend, I felt prepared to face whatever was ahead with Bill by mine and a haven from the outside world. The cabin was tucked away in the woods where the only sounds were the rustle of leaves and Bill's sporadic barking at a passing squirrel. Here the calm of nature had always calmed the restlessness that had started to bite me back home. Despite Bill's consoling presence, the silence felt deeper and heavier tonight, as though it were closing in on me and intensifying my sense of loneliness. The smell of pine and soil filled our breath as we hiked and explored pathways that wove through the forest throughout the day. The crisp air mixed with the rich perfume of wine as I uncorked a bottle as dusk drew near. As the sun sank behind the trees, creating deep shadows on the porch of the cabin, Bill laid at my feet, his warmth a tiny solace. The environment appeared to get softer with every glass, and my thoughts became more hazy. I spoke with Bill, sharing with him tales of my early years years and dreams that have since been buried beneath layers of daily life. His tail pounded softly against the wood as he listened, his eyes reflecting the fading light. The loneliness I had been fighting pushed forward as the night became darker. In an attempt to feel the warmth of another human being, I found myself bending closer to Bill. His warmth against my skin, his silky fur beneath my fingertips, and his affection felt like a balm in my drunken state. Then I misinterpreted my emotions in that vulnerable, wine-clouded moment. The boundaries of loneliness and comfort blurred in my confused state. Ever faithful, Bill reacted to my touch with the naivete of a friend. Oblivious to the nuanced nature of human feelings, I woke up the following morning with a stinging pain pounding behind my eyes as the sun peeked through the drapes. The previous night's events were recollected in pieces, each one more embarrassing than the last. A rush of terror washed over me as I sat up, my heart pounding. I turned to face Bill, who was now soundly asleep at the foot of the bed, unaware of the chaos going on within my head. It hit me like a cold splash when I realized what had happened and what I had done. I was appalled not only by the conduct, but also by what it meant for my mental health and marriage. I attempted to explain it away as an error, a weakness brought on by too much wine and too much time alone, but the guilt kept coming back to me. How did I allow myself to get this far? What did this indicate about Daniel and me, hoping the ritual would ground me? I got up my movements, robotic, and went to the kitchen to prepare coffee. I gazed out the window at the calm surroundings, which stood in sharp contrast to the internal turmoil. While the coffee was brewing, I had to adjust to make sense of this startling truth. I made the decision to do something I hadn't done in years, write in my journal. Writing and expressing my ideas felt like a confession and a means of relieving my load. Dear Journal, I can't undo the mistake that happened last night. It was a blur. I took solace in the only manner I knew how at the time, because I felt so isolated and cut off from everything. However, it served as a sobering reminder of how lost I've become rather than as solace. I genuinely adore Daniel, but there's a part of me that longs for something more than the routines of our lives and feels unfulfilled. Even though it sounds strange, this episode with Bill was a cry for assistance and a last-ditch effort to experience something different from the usual. I have to face this, figure out how to get back to myself and figure out what I really want. This is about me and choosing my own path, even if it means upending the life we've created together. It's not about Daniel. Although writing was helpful, the guilt persisted. I realized I needed to express this aspect of myself that was begging for attention with Daniel. However, how could I express this to him without hurting his feelings? How could I express to him how distant I felt and how inappropriately I turned to our dog for solace? As the day went on, I found myself strolling through the woods once more with Bill by my side, his presence now serving as a reminder of my isolation rather than a source of solace. Before I could hope to find peace with Daniel, I had to find peace within myself. I silently vowed to myself as the sun started to fall, bathing the trees in a golden glow. I would face my fears, my passions, and my loneliness. I would look for what we were lacking, not just for myself. Perhaps, just possibly, this strange event could serve as the impetus for development, transformation, and a better comprehension of what we both required from life and from one another. With Bill's tail wagging at my side, I felt a ray of optimism, a determination to confront my own inner truth, and maybe a new path forward with Daniel. The quiet of the cabin seemed worlds away from the familiar buzz of our home appliances and the distant sound of Daniel playing with his model trains in the basement. I went about my everyday business as usual, but my thoughts were elsewhere, reliving the disturbing things that had happened that evening with Bill. I felt as though my secret was weighing down every step I took. Ever the astute engineer, Daniel saw the shift in me almost instantly. "Is everything okay, Lila?" He questioned, his anxiety evident as his eyes searched mine for answers. "You come out as aloof." His soft voice stood in sharp contrast to my inner anguish. I made an effort to grin and dismiss his worry with a casual, "Oh, I'm just a little tired from the trip." However, my attempt at normalcy was as flimsy as the morning light coming in through our kitchen window, and the words seemed empty. Keeping my distance from people became my new normal. Daniel's slightest touch seemed capable of revealing the tempest that was building inside of me. I would quietly withdraw, making excuses about being too hot or needing space. Every time I could see the bewilderment in his eyes and the faint furrow of his forehead, but he didn't push, maybe in the hopes that I would open up on my own. As the days went by, my avoidance only became more noticeable. I would get absorbed in my thoughts while gazing at our garden's roses, whose vivid hues served as a sharp reminder of the life I should be leading. Once a haven, the library now felt like a cage, with every book serving as a mirror, reflecting my own unhappiness. Daniel made an effort to close the distance in his quiet, reflective manner. He turned to me one evening as we sat in the living room, me with a book I couldn't concentrate on and him with his trains, and he said softly but firmly, "Tell me, Lila, what's wrong? We cannot continue in this manner." I was driven to the edge by the gravity of what he said and the honesty in his eyes. I could feel the confession trying to get out, but I managed to swallow it back. "Daniel, I'm just confused. I'm the one, not you. I've got to work things out." I let him grab my hand when he reached for it. His touch was both reassuring and frighteningly warm. In a hopeful tone, he recommended that perhaps we could consult a counselor. It might improve our mutual understanding and assist us resolve this issue. Even though the idea was well-intentioned, it felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I felt guilty. It was intolerable to consider disclosing my innermost secret to a stranger in a sterile office. However, the thought of carrying on with the secret was just as depressing. With a hardly audible whisper, I nodded. That might be beneficial, but I was screaming inside. How could I let him know? How could I explain how my craving for something wild and untamed, coupled with my loneliness, had brought me to this improper time with our dear Bill? I lay awake that night while Daniel slept next to me, the stillness of our chamber reflecting the conflict in my emotions. Bill was a shadow in the moonlight when I turned to face him, his innocence standing in sharp contrast to my guilt. I was determined when I woke up the following morning I could no longer hide this from Daniel. He, us, and the life we had created weren't treated fairly. No matter how painful it was, I had to face my feelings and my behavior and tell the truth. The clatter of dishes as I was making breakfast was like the ticking of a clock, with every sound serving as a reminder of the impending confession. Daniel descended with a cautious smile, perhaps hoping for a sign that things were getting better. "Daniel," I began, my voice faltering, "I have to tell you about something that happened with Bill at the cabin." Every heartbeat was a drum roll to the confession I was going to make, and my heart was thumping in my chest. His attitude changed from one of concern to one of perplexity as he gazed at me. "Lila, what do you mean, what became of Bill?" With the words weighing heavily on my tongue, I inhaled deeply. "Daniel, I was lonely. I felt so cut off, and I stepped over the line in a moment of weakness. It was a mistake, a very bad one." Daniel's face turned pale as he looked into my eyes, seeking clarification and more. "What are you saying, Lila?" I muttered, unable to look at him. My longing for something different and my overwhelming isolation led me to an emotional breakdown. "I deeply regret." It was a moment of emotional confusion and poor judgment. "Daniel, I'm very sorry." The ensuing hush was deafening. Daniel's response was one of shock rather than rage as his brain tried to comprehend what I had just admitted. Finally, in a strained voice, he murmured, "Lila, I am at a loss for words. This is not what was intended. I need time to reflect." With tears running down my cheeks, I nodded. "I get it. I simply could no longer hide this from you. I need to better understand myself and find a way to make this right because I love you, Daniel." He got to his feet slowly and deliberately. He stated in a distant voice, "I'm going for a walk. I must get my thoughts straight." I felt the full force of my actions as he walked away, the door quietly closing behind him. The silence served as a sharp reminder of the distance I had caused, and the place felt empty. The coffee was getting cold as I sat there thinking about the ramifications of what I had just done. Would I ever get Daniel's forgiveness after this? Is there any chance we may get back together? As I waited, the questions tormented me. The clock ticking away was the only sound in the room, and every second seemed to drag on forever as I dealt with the fallout from my now exposed secret. The counselor's session was intended to be about us and our relationship, but it ended up being far more intimate and honest than I had expected. I felt as though my soul was exposed to the fluorescent lights when I sat in that room with the volumes on psychology and human behavior on the walls. "How are you feeling these days?" Lila, Dr. Evans, the psychotherapist, asked softly, her eyes mild but piercing. The words caught in my throat as I inhaled deeply. I was alone. I admitted, my voice hardly more than a whisper. "It feels like I'm losing myself in this habit, this predictable life." Daniel, who was seated next to me, squeezed my hand, clearly supporting me, but I could tell he was confused. He was unaware of how deeply troubled I was and how a storm was building inside of me. Dr. Evans looked from one of us to the other and nodded. "How is your connection with Daniel going? What impact do you think these emotions have had?" Daniel had a worried expression on his face when I looked at him. My voice trembled as I said, "It's not about him. It's me, not just from him, but from who I am. I feel like I'm slipping away, and there's this incident, this secret which has been bothering me." Daniel tightened his hold on my hand, but he said nothing, waiting for me to say anything else. With a serious gaze, the counselor leaned forward. "Relationship barriers can occasionally be caused by secrets. Sharing is crucial, as is letting go of the things that are burdening you." I nodded, letting the tears that I had been suppressing fall freely. The cabin was the location. My voice was hardly audible when I started. When I was alone myself, I made a terribly regrettable decision. Bill was accompanying him. Daniel's eyes widened in surprise as his expression changed from worry to shock. "What are you saying, Lila?" He sounded confused and saddened at the same time. "Daniel, I felt incredibly alone. I made a horrible error and went too far. It was a moment of emotional confusion and poor judgment. I'm so sorry." There was a profound quiet in the room. Dr. Evans observed us, the seriousness of the situation evident in her eyes. "Lila, you must realize that the significance of the deed is just as vital as the act itself. Your hunger for something more and your sense of loneliness are genuine and must be addressed." Still processing, Daniel's voice was tight when he eventually spoke. "I am at a loss for words. This is not what was intended. I need time to reflect." I acknowledged his need for space and nodded. "Daniel, I understand I simply could no longer hide this from you. I need to better understand myself and find a way to make this right, since I love you." He got to his feet slowly and deliberately. He stated in a distant voice, "I'm going for a walk. I must get my thoughts straight." I felt the full force of my actions as he walked away, the door quietly closing behind him. The silence served as a sharp reminder of the distance I had caused, and the place felt empty. The coffee was getting cold as I sat there thinking about the ramifications of what I had just done. Would I ever get Daniel's forgiveness? After this, is there any chance we may get back together? As I waited, the questions tormented me. The clock ticking away was the only sound in the room, and every second seemed to drag on forever as I dealt with the fallout from my now exposed secret. Tension hung heavy in the air at home. Later, I was aware that I had to stop allowing the secret to fester. In dramatic contrast to the chaos in our lives, Daniel's model trains were running in their never-ending loops when I found him in the living room. "Daniel," I began, my voice faltering, "I need to discuss what transpired in the cabin with you." Now that the trains were completely silent, he shut them off. "Lila, I'm paying attention." With the words weighing heavily on my tongue, I inhaled deeply. I was by myself and I crossed an emotional line in my desperation and regret. It was a moment of perplexity and helplessness. "Daniel, I'm very sorry." Daniel's face turned pale as he looked into my eyes, seeking clarification and more. "What are you saying, Lila?" I muttered, unable to look at him. My longing for something different and my overwhelming isolation led me to an emotional breakdown. "I deeply regret." It was a moment of emotional confusion and poor judgment. "Daniel, I'm very sorry." The ensuing hush was deafening. Daniel's response was one of shock rather than rage as his brain tried to comprehend what I had just admitted. Finally, in a hoarse voice, he added, "Lila, I am at a loss for words. This is not what was intended. I need time to reflect." With tears running down my cheeks, I nodded. "I get it. I simply could no longer hide this from you. I need to better understand myself and find a way to make this right because I love you, Daniel." He got to his feet slowly and deliberately. He stated in a distant voice, "I'm going for a walk. I must get my thoughts straight." I felt the full force of my actions as he walked away, the door quietly closing behind him. The silence served as a sharp reminder of the distance I had caused, and the place felt empty. The coffee was getting cold as I sat there thinking about the ramifications of what I had just done. Would I ever get Daniel's forgiveness? After this, is there any chance we may get back together? As I waited, the question tormented me. The clock ticking away was the only sound in the room, and every second seemed to drag on forever as I dealt with the fallout from my now exposed secret. Daniel came back from his stroll with a mask of introspection. His eyes searched mine for something I couldn't quite understand as he sat down across from me. "Lila," he said in a steady but emotionally charged voice, "you told me something that has been on my mind a lot. There's a lot to take in." As I waited for the decision that would alter everything, I nodded with my heart in my throat. "Perhaps part of the issue is that we've created a nice, predictable, and love-filled existence together. Lila, perhaps we have been too engrossed in the daily grind to notice what has been absent." He hesitated, lowering his eyes to the ground and then raising them back to mine. "We need to resolve this, in my opinion, not just as husband and wife, but also as lifelong friends." Despite being unexpected, his remarks gave me hope. Altogether, my question was hardly audible above a whisper. "Yes, together," he said, extending his hand to grasp mine. "Lila, we need your aid. We should look for a therapist who can help us navigate this. We must improve our communication skills and rediscover one another." I could feel the weight being lifted from my shoulders. "Daniel, I concur. I'd like to put this right. I want us to be all right, and I want to better understand myself." Our new routine was therapy. Dr. Evans guided us through the choppy waters of our emotions with her cool head and perceptive questions. Every session was like removing layers to expose the unvarnished realities we had kept from one another. "I felt as though our lives were suffocating me, Daniel." In an emotionally charged voice, I confessed to one session. The routine and predictability resembled a cage, and it was a cries for assistance, a last-ditch effort to experience something tangible that night. night, with Bill Daniel listened, grief and comprehension mixed on his face. Lila, I didn't see it. I was so preoccupied with my work, my trains, and my own world. You didn't slip away from me. Dr. Evans led us through communication exercises and urged us to be honest about our needs and wants. What do you think you need, Lila, to feel content? She inquired. I need spontaneity and adventure. I answered the words strange and freeing at the same time. I can't just go through the motions. I need to feel alive. And what are your thoughts on this, Daniel? She faced him, he stated in a forceful voice. I want to help Lila find that. Even for me, I now see how formulaic our lives have becoming. Perhaps we can strike a balance that meets our needs. Months passed. We also became closer as individuals who understood each other's depths. Not just as partners with each session, Daniel began accompanying me on my walks following new routes, and occasionally even going to the more untamed areas of our neighborhood. We conversed and laughed, and gradually the gap between us started to narrow. We were sitting at another neighborhood barbecue one evening when the sound of glasses clinking and the familiar sizzle of the grill filled the air. Bill was there fetching balls for the children, his tail waving wildly. My heart felt lighter than it has in months as I observed him. Daniel silently acknowledged our journey by squeezing my hand. With his eyes reflecting the flickering lights of the BBQ, he muttered, I'm proud of us, Lila. Aren't we retracing our steps toward one another? I grinned as a feeling of warmth washed over me. Indeed, we are, Daniel. It's not simply about turning around, it's about embarking on a new journey together. I became aware that our event had changed the course of our future as the night grew darker. The lessons we learned were not only about understanding and forgiving, but also about the value of development and making room for change, while maintaining the security of our love. We discovered that balance and the dance between the two are more important in life than routine or the unexpected. Even though Daniel's model train continued to run in their loops, we now took care to occasionally derail them so that we may both explore new lines. As for me, I discovered that rather than being repressed, the wild, untamed side of me should be embraced, shared, and included into our daily lives. Though it was ours, the road ahead may have been unorthodox, involving therapy sessions, lengthy walks, and impromptu outings. Bill's happy bark served as the perfect accompaniment as we walked it hand in hand, demonstrating our tenacity and dedication to one another. As the stars started to shine above, I realized that although our journey had been turbulent, it had also been life-changing. We were learning, loving, and thriving in ways we had never experienced before, not simply getting by. This was a new chapter in our relationship, one in which Lila and Daniel's love story was not only etched in the stars, but was realized in each and every action we did together. If you liked this tale, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. This will enable us to produce stories for you that are more captivating.